The massive colony ship drifted silently through the endless void, its metallic hull scarred by centuries of interstellar travel. Inside, thousands of cryo chambers hummed with a soft, rhythmic pulse, each containing a human suspended between life and death. Captain June Park floated through the dimly lit corridor, his breath creating tiny crystals in the cold, artificial atmosphere. Something was different this time. The ship's ancient AI, a system that had survived Earth's final catastrophic moments, was sending unusual signals through its network. Diagnostic screens flickered with strange patterns. Not errors, but something more complex. June touched the nearest cryo chamber, where his sister Hana remained in suspended animation, her face peaceful despite the journey that had lasted 3 centuries. The ship's memory banks told a desperate story. Humanity's last hope, launched when Earth became uninhabitable. Climate collapse, nuclear conflicts, and resource wars had pushed civilization to its final desperate act. This ship, the Prometheus Ascendant, carried the genetic and cultural diversity of what remained of human civilization. A soft beep interrupted his thoughts. The primary awakening sequence was initiating. June watched as the first row of cryo chambers began to pulse with soft blue light. Mechanical arms moved with precision, preparing each chamber for the complex revival process. First would come the essential personnel, medical teams, engineers, and key specialists who would assess the ship's condition. The first chamber opened with a hiss of compressed air. Dr. Yoon Ji Park, a brilliant geneticist and medical officer, took her first breath in 300 years. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, quickly scanned her surroundings. Years of training kicked in immediately. She checked her own vital signs, then began examining the systems around her. "Status report," she called out, her voice slightly raspy, from centuries of disuse. June approached, holding a medical diagnostic tablet. "All primary systems stable. We're approaching an uncharted sector of space." More chambers began to open. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, each carefully selected to ensure humanity's survival. They moved with a precision that spoke of years of training and preparation. No panic, no confusion, just pure, calculated purpose. The ship's sensors began collecting data about their current location. Star charts that had been programmed centuries ago no longer matched the current galactic landscape. Something fundamental had changed during their long sleep. Hana Kim, the navigation specialist, was the next to fully awaken. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, comparing old star maps with current sensor readings. "This isn't where we were supposed to be," she muttered, her brow furrowing. Outside the ship's protective hull, the universe held its secrets. Unknown star systems, shifted planetary alignments, and cosmic changes that no human had ever witnessed before surrounded them. The Prometheus Ascendant was more than a ship. It was humanity's last hope, a seed of civilization drifting through an alien darkness. June watched as the awakening continued. Each person brought with them the collective memory of a lost planet. Earth was gone, but they carried its legacy. Genetic records, cultural archives, technological blueprints, everything that made humanity unique was stored within this ship and its sleeping inhabitants. The medical AI began running comprehensive health checks. Centuries of cryopreservation had been carefully calculated to minimize cellular damage. Each human was essentially perfect, preserved like a moment frozen in time, now slowly returning to life. "Total population status," June requested. The ship's computer responded in a calm, synthesized voice. 50,342 humans successfully preserved. Revival sequence at 17% completion. No critical failures detected. Yoonji approached June, her medical scanner active. "We're going to need a complete system review. 3 centuries is longer than any previous cryo mission." The ship continued its slow awakening. Humanity's last expedition was beginning its journey into an unknown future. No one knew what waited beyond the ship's protective shell. No one could predict how the galaxy might have changed during their long sleep, but they were awake, they were alive, and they were ready. The trading hub of Nexus Station buzzed with its usual chaotic energy. Merchants from a dozen different star systems haggled over rare minerals, exotic technologies, and information packets. No one noticed the small shuttle approaching until its identification codes appeared on the main communication grid. Wu Xin adjusted his environmental suit, checking the advanced translation device embedded in his communication system. Behind him, a team of 5 carefully selected human explorers prepared for their first external mission. They were not soldiers, not diplomats in the traditional sense. They were investigators, observers, survivors. The station's traffic control suddenly went silent. Something was different about this incoming vessel. Its design was both familiar and completely alien, a hybrid of ancient human technology and modifications that spoke of centuries of adaptation. Incoming vessel, you are required to state your origin and purpose. A mechanical voice crackled through the communication system. Wu's response was calm and direct. Human colony ship Prometheus Ascendant, requesting standard docking and information exchange. The silence that followed was deafening. Holographic displays across the station began to flicker. Old database records started to activate. Historical archives that most current inhabitants had forgotten existed. Images of humanity flickered. Old news reports, historical records, final transmissions from a species that was supposed to be extinct. A Kreltian merchant with its multiple eye stalks and iridescent skin dropped a container of rare crystals. Impossible, it muttered. The Kreltian database clearly showed humanity as a failed species, wiped out during the Great Galactic, purged centuries ago. Wu and his team moved with calculated precision. Each step was measured, each gesture deliberate. They carried no visible weapons, but something about their presence suggested a potential for action that made surrounding species uncomfortable. The station's central communication hub began to crash. Multiple systems started to cross-reference the incoming human data. Historical records, genetic archives, technological databases, all began to reassemble themselves in ways no one had anticipated. Identification confirmed, the station's main computer suddenly announced. Human species. Status. Previously classified as extinct. Nearby alien merchants began to move away. Rumors spread faster than light in such trading hubs. Humans, a species whispered about in old stories discussed in cautionary tales, were somehow alive. Wu approached the central communication desk. A Zornic administrator, a crystalline being that communicated through light patterns, seemed frozen in place. Wu's translator converted his simple greeting into multiple communication spectrums. "We mean no harm," he said simply. "We are here to understand." The station's ambient temperature seemed to drop. Something fundamental was changing. A species considered dead was now very much alive, standing in the middle of a busy trading hub, looking calm and curious. One of Wu's team members, a young engineer named Jin, began scanning the local technological systems. Her device, a compact piece of human technology, started to interface with station systems in ways no one had seen before. Firewalls collapsed, information streams opened, and decades of locked data began to flow. The Kreltian merchant who had dropped his crystals now watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. Humans were not supposed to be here. They were not supposed to exist. "How?" the merchant finally asked. "Your species was destroyed." Wu simply smiled. It was not a threatening smile, but one that suggested profound understanding and potential. "We survived," he responded. Station security began to move, then stopped. Their protocols had no clear guidelines for dealing with a species that was simultaneously historical and present. In that moment, something shifted. The galaxy, which had grown comfortable with its established order, suddenly realized that a variable had entered the equation. Humans were back, and nothing would remain the same. The trading hub of Nexus Station would forever remember this day as the moment everything changed, the day the humans returned. The research facility on Gamma Quadrant's primary research station looked like any other advanced scientific complex. Sleek surfaces, Holographic displays and complex machinery dominated the environment. But today was different. Today, a human engineer named Yoon Ji Park would change everything. Her team of 5 human specialists stood around a central platform where an alien energy transmission system was displayed. The local scientific community, a mix of silicon-based and energy-sensitive species, watched with growing curiosity and subtle tension. Your current energy transmission loses 43% efficiency during transfer, Yoon-ji stated, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The translation systems converted her words into multiple communication spectrums. The lead alien researcher, a crystalline being named Zork, clicked its peripheral appendages in defensive response. This system has been standard for 17 galactic cycles. It cannot be improved. Yoon-ji smiled. Humans had heard that phrase before. Many times, her compact device, no larger than a human hand, began interfacing with the massive energy transmission system. Lines of code, written in a hybrid language that combined human computational thinking with adaptive quantum algorithms, started flowing through the station's networks. What happened next was nothing short of technological magic. The energy transmission system began to reshape itself. Molecular structures realigned, quantum pathways reconstructed. What was once a rigid, inefficient network now became a fluid, adaptive system that could redirect energy with minimal loss. Impossible, Zork muttered. The efficiency numbers began to climb. 50% improvement, then 60%. By the time Yoon-ji finished her initial modification, the system was functioning at 87% efficiency, a leap that would transform multiple technological sectors. Surrounding researchers began recording everything. Some looked afraid, others looked excited, a few looked completely bewildered. Jin, another human engineer, started explaining the modifications. "It's not about having more power," she said. "It's about understanding how energy actually moves. Most systems fight against natural energy flow. We're designing systems that work with it." The modification wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. Alien technicians began comparing notes. The humans hadn't just improved a system, they had reimagined its entire fundamental approach. This wasn't just an upgrade, this was a complete technological perspective shift. News spread quickly. What began in one research station soon became a galactic discussion. Humans were bringing something unexpected, not just technological improvements, but a completely different way of thinking about technology. Yoon-ji's team worked quietly. No dramatic speeches, no aggressive claims, just steady, methodical problem-solving that seemed to unlock potential no one had previously recognized. Other research stations began requesting human consultations, energy networks, communication systems, medical technologies. Everywhere humans looked, they found opportunities for fundamental reimagination. The galaxy had forgotten something about humans during their long absence. Humans didn't just solve problems. They transformed entire conceptual frameworks. Zork watched as the human team packed their equipment. "How did you do this?" the researcher finally asked. Yoon-ji's response was simple. "We asked different questions." By the end of the standard galactic cycle, human technological consultants were the most requested specialists in multiple sectors. Not through military might, not through aggressive expansion, but through pure, elegant problem-solving. The technological disruption had begun. And the galaxy was just starting to understand what that meant. Quantum networks realigned. Energy. Systems transformed. Communication pathways reopened. And at the center of it all were humans. Quiet, determined, endlessly curious. The humans were back, and they were going to change everything. The grand interstellar conference chamber stretched like a massive amphitheater. Representatives from 17 different galactic civilizations sat in carefully arranged positions, their various biological forms creating a strange mosaic of alien diversity. At the center stood Hyun-Soo Kim, a human diplomatic strategist with unusually calm eyes. No weapons were present, no military displays, just a human standing alone, about to change everything. His presentation began simply. No complex graphs, no aggressive statements, just pure, direct communication that seemed to bypass traditional diplomatic barriers. Each alien representative wore a translation device, but something told them this human's words needed no technological assistance. Conflict is a failure of imagination, Hyun-Soo stated. The Kreltian representative shifted uncomfortably. The Zornik delegation exchanged rapid light communications. Something was happening that they couldn't quite understand. Hyun-Soo began explaining complex geopolitical tensions between several star systems. But instead of taking sides, he presented a completely unexpected approach. He showed how these conflicts emerged from resource misunderstandings, communication gaps, and deep-rooted cultural misconceptions. Then he did something extraordinary. He proposed solutions that benefited all parties, not through compromise, but through total system reimagination. The Vextarian representative, a being composed of intricate energy patterns, leaned forward. Humans were not presenting themselves as conquerors or mediators. They were presenting themselves as problem solvers. Your current system creates conflict by design, Hyun-Soo explained. We can redesign the entire interaction framework. What made his approach terrifying was its simplicity. Humans weren't offering complex treaties or diplomatic gymnastics. They were offering fundamental perspective shifts that made existing conflict models obsolete. One by one, the alien representatives realized something profound. The humans weren't just solving problems. They were making those problems look ridiculous by showing how unnecessary they had always been. A Kreltian diplomat whispered to another, "They're not fighting our systems. They're making our systems look childish." Hyun-Soo's presentation continued. He broke down centuries-old conflicts into simple human psychology, resource competition, cultural misunderstandings, communication barriers. Then he showed alternative paths that seemed so obvious yet had never been considered. The conference chamber grew uncomfortably quiet. No military threats, no aggressive posturing. Just a human showing how intelligent cooperation could transform entire civilizational structures. The psychological impact was devastating. These alien civilizations had spent millennia fighting complex wars, developing intricate diplomatic strategies. And here was a species showing them that most of those strategies were fundamentally unnecessary. Humans weren't conquering through force. They were conquering through perspective. When Hyun-Soo finished, no one applauded, no one needed to. The silent understanding was more powerful than any standing ovation. The Zornik delegation's communication patterns revealed pure shock. Their complex, light-based communication networks were struggling to process what they had just witnessed. "We're not here to win," Hyun-Soo said in his final statement. "We're here to solve problems together." Outside the conference chamber, news networks across multiple star systems began broadcasting the presentation. Millions of beings watched a human systematically dismantle complex conflict structures without raising his voice. The psychological warfare wasn't about defeating enemies. It was about making the entire concept of enemies look obsolete. By the time the conference ended, something had fundamentally changed. The galaxy was looking at humans differently, not as a military threat, not as technological innovators, but as a species capable of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. Hyun-Soo walked out quietly, knowing that he had just rewritten diplomatic understanding across multiple star systems. No weapons, no threats, just pure, intelligent communication. The humans were back, and they were going to change everything, not through force but through understanding. 10 standard galactic cycles had passed since the humans' return. The Interstellar Collaborative Network headquarters orbited a massive neutron star, a symbol of the new galactic order that humanity had quietly engineered. Captain June Park stood at the central observation deck, watching holographic displays that showed the unprecedented transformation. Species that had been bitter enemies for thousands of years now worked together, shared resources, and developed joint scientific initiatives. No one had seen it coming. No one except the humans. The network's primary communication hub showed something remarkable. Collaborative projects now outnumbered conflict zones by 327%. Trade routes that were once battlegrounds were now highways of cultural and technological exchange. Hana Kim, now the primary strategic coordinator, walked in with a data tablet. Her movements were calm, her eyes reflecting years of careful planning. The Kreltian and Zornik Agricultural Collaborative just produced enough food to feed 3 previously starving planetary systems, she reported. June smiled. This was exactly what they had planned during those long years in cryosleep. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy, they had transformed it. The holographic displays showed a complex web of connections. Research stations, trade routes, cultural exchange centers, all interconnected in ways no one had previously imagined. Where there were once borders, now there were bridges. A young human engineer named Jin approached with new technological integration reports. Alien species were not just using human-developed technologies. They were collaborating to develop entirely new systems of understanding. The Vextarian Energy Network, once a complex and inefficient system, now operated at 92% efficiency. Medical technologies developed through joint human-alien research had eliminated 3 major planetary diseases. Communication systems had been redesigned to allow unprecedented levels of cross-species understanding. We didn't come to rule, June often said. We came to solve. The transformation was subtle but profound. No massive wars, no violent conquests, just a systematic, intelligent approach to solving fundamental problems that had plagued galactic civilizations for millennia. Diplomatic centers that were once battlegrounds now hosted joint research initiatives. Species that had never spoken to each other were now developing shared technologies, exploring mutual scientific interests. Yoon Ji Park, now leading the primary research collaborative, had a simple philosophy. Every problem is just an opportunity. We haven't understood yet, she would tell her mixed species research teams. The humans had brought something unexpected, not technological superiority, not military might, but a fundamental way of thinking that saw potential where others saw limitations. Alien historians would later call this the human transition period, a time when a supposedly extinct species returned and reimagined everything. The holographic displays continued to shift. Collaborative projects multiplied. Resource distribution became more equitable. Cultural exchanges happened at unprecedented rates. June watched the displays, remembering the desperate mission that had launched their colony ship centuries ago. They hadn't just survived, they had transformed an entire galactic ecosystem. We didn't conquer, Hana said, standing beside him. We connected. Outside the observation deck, stars continued their ancient dance. But something had changed. The universe itself seemed to be breathing differently. The humans had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. A small notification appeared on the main display. Another joint research project approved. Another cultural exchange initiated. Another problem about to be solved. The galaxy continued its complex dance of existence. But now it danced to a different rhythm, a rhythm of collaboration, of understanding, of pure, intelligent possibility. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its technology. It had been its ability to see potential where others saw only conflict, and in that seeing, they had changed everything.